So it's a beautiful September afternoon here in Richmond, Rhode Island, and I'm super excited because I've been wanting to make this video for 2 years, but I couldn't just do it because I had to wait until I had enough data so that I wasn't talking out my butt, and so that I could prove to you that what the numbers said would happen actually happened. What am I talking about? I'm talking about my big beautiful baby. Welcome to my channel. I'm Tim, a professional mariner, an alternative energy enthusiast, and an adventure traveler. Come along as I split my time between work and traveling the world and trying to find better ways for sustainability. Look at this thing. Oh, it's starting to move right now. This, let's turn that way. You can see it's moving right now. This is an XY tracker made by a company called All Earth. All Earth Trackers, I think, up in Vermont. And it holds 24 300-watt panels. And they all have optimizers on them. Let me show you around the back. So this is the back view of this amazing array. Anyway, there's 24 panels, all with optimizers that all come down to this Solar Edge 6 kilowatt inverter. So what the optimizers do, there's always an argument of whether micro inverters are better than standalone inverters. And I guess micro inverters are awesome if you have like one panel that gets, maybe if you have the panels on your house and you have a chimney that produces a shadow on one shadow. If you don't have optimizers or micro inverters, all the panels tend to go to the lowest common denominator. But with separate inverters, just one will get the shadow and have its power reduced, and the rest will be fine. Well, I guess the optimizers do somewhat of the same thing. So we have all these panels up here. This goes into here, and then if you look over on this side, this is the hydraulics of the unit. Oh, now you see it's going to move again. It starts up the hydraulics, get everything moving, and then now it's tilting up from the ram right here. And usually, depending on the time of day, it moves anywhere from about every 6 to 10 minutes. This one was obviously a little faster because the other time one was an X and the other was a Y move. But what's special about this is that this whole unit in there has a little controller in there, and you can see there's a hydraulic motor up there, the black thing, and that actually spins the whole unit around horizontally, and then the cylinder here moves it vertically up and down. And so the controller has a GPS, and it goes and figures out where it is, gets a time date stamp, and then the algorithm figures out where the sun is at any given time. So as the sun comes over the horizon, this thing starts pointing to it and tries to get the optimum angle while the sun is available. Now if you look at my yard, you can see I'm kind of in a hole of these massive trees, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to go and invest in a tracker, because had I put well, you can also see my house is over here. I could have put some panels on the roof. Unfortunately, that's really facing east. The southerly exposure would have been that way. In other words, the slant of my roof is east and west, as opposed to, you really want southerly exposure for your panels. So if I put them on the roof, they wouldn't have been put right. I wouldn't have had enough room for them. If I've had a stationary ground array right here, I would have had to put something like 36 or 38 panels to get the same amount of power of ones of these 24 that move. And as you can see, if you see, maybe you can see the, there you go. This is a good test right here. I'm parallel with the panels right now, and you can see the shadow is exactly the same size of what I'm doing, and so that indicates that yes, in fact, the panels are looking at, get ready for some lens flare here, they're looking right at the sun, even though the sun is kind of behind some clouds right there. But anyway, this is the, oh, and it also, everyone says, why does it have an anemometer or wind gauge up on the top? Well, at night, this thing goes, it puts itself to bed. So in other words, in the case that there's a storm that blows through at night or whatever, you don't want this big sail to have to, you know, have to deal with all that wind. So every night when the sun goes down, this thing goes, and it goes horizontal, so that it's a smaller wind, it has less windage, so that the wind won't hit it as much. But during the day, while it's moving, if that anemometer sees, I guess I gotta go way back here to film it. There it is. Right now you can see it's barely spinning at all because there's hardly any wind. But if it sees anything, I think it's like 30 knots of wind, or maybe 35 or something like that. But when it sees enough of wind that it gets scared, it goes into a protection mode, and once again puts the whole unit to sleep to reduce the windage. I'm gonna try to see if I can do this. I have some pictures of when they excavated all this. This post right here isn't just jammed into the ground. They dug a hole about 8 feet deep and put this huge cement mushroom down there. And let me see if I can do this right. If I do this right, I should have a picture that I can put right over here. I don't know if I'm gonna get that right. But anyway, really cool stuff. It all comes in. It usually pumps about 300 volts, 350 volts into this. This inverter here, you can see, right now you gotta get up on this bucket here to get up there to turn it on, but there's a whole display there that you can do it. But anyway, it converts it down to 240 and comes over here. And from here we have you'll see there's 2 breakers in here. One breaker is it's a 40 amp 240 breaker, and that's for the production. That's for the power that's going back to the grid. And the other is a 15 amp breaker that actually runs the unit. And before we go down and take a look at the other stuff, I wanted to tell you about the thing. Apparently they have this thing, since I've had it for a couple of years, I've been able to see this. Every morning when it starts, it's flat like this, and every morning it goes and it dumps, so that if there's any dew on it, it kind of washes all the dust and pollen and all that sort of stuff off. And it also, when it snows, every morning it goes and it dumps all the snow off of it, and then it rotates around. If you just buy the unit and they just install it like I had done here, it works fine and it does everything great. But apparently if you're in a snow belt region or up in the mountains where you get tons and tons of snow, you can see we don't have a lot of room here for all the snow. If the snow was going to pile up in Rhode Island, it hasn't been an issue, and every time it does it, it keeps doing it a little further away. But they can program it remotely from Vermont. It has an internet connection, and they can go and go in there and give you a new, what they call a snow belt algorithm, so that every time it dumps here, and then it will dump over there, and then over here, and over there. And so by the time the winter's done, you got a big circle around you. But anyway, so they've put it in, I think this is my 3rd year using it now, and it's worked flawlessly. And then I had one problem with it, and it just stopped producing. Unfortunately, right in June, or halfway through June, all of July, and halfway through August before we got it up and running again. And I don't believe that it was ever a problem with All Earth Solar or with Solar Edge. The good news is that both of those companies are highly respected. The company that installed it that I went with when I bought this whole system, unfortunately, after being around for almost like 40 years, after I got the system from them, they went out of business. They had some internal problem, whatever it was. So now I have a system that I spent $34,000 on, and it's not producing any power in the months that I need it the most. Well, the good news was that the guy who sold it to me, the salesman, is, you know, I don't know the company, but the salesman you get to know after a while. And he had gone to work for another company. I called him up and I was like, look, what do I do? Do I go in? I can try to fix this myself, but I didn't spend that kind of money to be a handyman. And he said, no. I worked for another company. That other company is out of business, and it worked out really well to get, apparently nobody knows for sure, and luckily for me, they didn't press the issue. But this thing is warranted against defects. If it's not supposed, basically if anything goes wrong with it for 10 years, it's supposed to be taken care of, with one exception. Well, a couple exceptions. If a tree falls on it, that's not the fault of the of All Earth Solar or Solar Edge or the GE panels or whatever it is. That's nobody's fault. That's something that you deal with your homeowners. Same thing with lightning. Now, I don't know what happened, but for some reason, on the same time, at the same day, the inverter stopped inverting and the tracker computer stopped working. A board went in there. I don't know what happened. If it got struck by lightning, which would be, that would be a culprit that we would look for. The guy that came out to take a look at it looked, and he couldn't find any places that were burnt. Usually when you get struck by lightning around certain grounds and stuff like that, you see little burn marks. There was none of that. So it is possible that something was struck by lightning farther away and a pulse went through and wiped it out. I don't know that either. The good news is the company that I dealt with was really cool, and they're like, look, we can't prove that it was lightning, so this isn't your fault. You don't have to claim it on your homeowner insurance. We will get it warranted for you. You're just going to have to pay the labor because you didn't buy it from us. And quite frankly, that seems rather fair to me. I had to pay them something like $119 or $120 or something like that to get in with this new company, just so that they manage the system for me. Then they warranted and gave me a brand new inverter, came out 3 or 4 times to change the board out of the other thing, of the tracker and all that sort of stuff. And I ended up having to give them like $350 for their labor, but all the parts were covered. And some of you might think that's a lot of money, but to put that, what you're going to see soon is that I was losing almost $400 a month by having it not produce. Okay, that brings me to the next thing. When people put solar in their yard or on their roof, what's more traditional for people around here to put it on their roof, unless you have a roof like mine, it doesn't work too well. So people usually do things, and it's 2 ways that you do it. The most popular way is something that, they're all going to be grid tied unless you're living off grid, and that's completely different. But if you're tied to the grid, there's usually 2 ways that people get this done. You do what you call net metering, which is the most popular. And basically when the sun shines, you run your meter backwards, and then at night it runs forwards, and if there's a discrepancy, they either store it for later for you, or they pay you back, or if it goes the other way, you pay them the difference. So in other words, if you produce 10 units of energy but you used 11, you'd only pay for 1. I think you get the idea. That's a really good deal for a lot of people. Fortunately, in Rhode Island had suffered from being known as one of the worst solar states in the Union for years and years and years. And then all of a sudden, everything changed. All these other states were having these wonderful things. The federal government gives you 30% back that you get back not as a tax deduction, but as a tax credit that comes right off your bill like cash. It's wonderful, especially if you pay a lot of taxes. That's across the country. I don't think anybody can mess with that. That's really good. There are other states like Massachusetts had, I think Massachusetts had like 25% off of their state tax that you could do the same thing. So basically, if you spent $10,000 on a system, you were only going to pay like $4,500 and the state would pay the rest. That's a pretty good deal. Rhode Island didn't have any of that. All they had was the state one. They were proud because they said, oh, well, we won't charge you any sales tax on it. Like, well, that's not really, I'm really looking for something else. So all of a sudden, Rhode Island came up with a thing that said that you have to, the electric companies have to go and by some certain year, a certain percentage of all of their power has to come from renewable energy. So if the local power companies don't have that by that year, they have to buy it. And when you buy it, because the grid is all connected, sometimes they might buy cheap hydroelectric power from Canada, but they have to pay everyone's grid to get it down to us, and by the time they do that, it's very, very, very expensive. So it ends up being cost effective for the companies to to go out before these dates happen and give a big incentive to people. Basically what the electric companies are saying is, hey, we don't want to put out the expenditure and the capital of building all these things. Put it on your roof and we'll pay you what we would have paid to ship that down when the time came anyway. So that's the thing that I went with. And when you do that, that is called feed-in tariff. And the feed-in tariff rate that I was able to get, I think, was 37.65 cents a kilowatt for 15 years. That's incredible. You need to think about that. That means every kilowatt I produce, I'm making 37.65 cents a kilowatt. Put that in, if you look at my bill and see what I pay for electricity, if you forget about the fuel charge and the delivery charge, if you get the total bill and divide it by the total number of kilowatt hours I used, it works out to 18 cents a kilowatt hour. So basically, the electric company is paying me 2 cents for every 1 cent they charge me. That's incredible. So, when we do that, this is the old meter. Get a shot of that. This is the old meter right here, and as you can see, there are things on in the house and it's spinning very slowly. This is the consumption meter. This right here is the solar meter, and you can see I've already made, hang on a second, it goes to there and then it's going to rotate through. I've made over 2 megawatts of power so far. That's incredible. And well, I'll show you the graph on the inside here pretty soon. 240 volt power that comes down through here, comes through a disconnect, goes through here and goes right back out to the grid. So any power I use goes right back in and I get charged for it. I say I get charged for it, but I'm really getting charged half of what they're paying me for that power. So that's how that works. Then I'll try to break down and show you what we've produced. Okay, so this is my, let me put it this way, landscape here so you can see it. Hopefully you can see this. This is my monitoring software for today. And it's a cloudy day, as you can see this, but this tells you in time right here. So around 7:30 it started getting some background light, but it's blocked by the trees. Just around 9:30 it got over the trees, and where a lot of solar panels you'll see have a nice gradual rise in the graph, you can see where this one goes immediately from just a few hundred watts all the way up to almost 100% production to 6 kilowatts or almost thereabouts. It's probably a result of some clouds or whatever. Then later on we must have got cloudy here around 12 o'clock or so. It fell down like that. Then the sun came out again, it went to here, and that's where we are right now. So that's kind of how the graph works. Let me put it sideways so you can see it a little bit better. There we go. That kind of shows how that works. This is our maximum right here. We can't make any more than that. As you can see, when it got out of the sun there, it went right to the maximum there, and then it stopped only because we haven't got that far in the day yet. It's 3 o'clock right now. So this is here. That was the last time it reported. So then, if I pull this down, you can see here's the date today, and it says today so far I've made 18.59 kilowatts. I've made 682 kilowatts this month, and 20 megawatts, not 2 megawatts, 20 megawatts over the lifetime. Now this is just this. If I come over to here, it'll actually show you in real time, or somewhat. What we have here is, this is the whole array, and each one, this one's producing 780 watts. It's produced so far today. Each one will tell you how much it produces, and this is really good. Where this is good is, like, you're going to see one over here where, like down here on the lower 700. This was the one that probably had the most shade because of the way the sun came over the trees. It only produced 700 watts. Now normally if I didn't have those optimizers, oops, sorry about that. If I didn't have those optimizers, all of these would be brought down to 700, but because of the optimizers, the ones here on top that were getting the better sunlight, I was able to get them to put out whatever whatever they could put out, and so that's where we are. I hope that kind of makes somewhat sense. Then, if I go back over here, I can show you, this shows you how things work as a breakdown for the month. Maybe I can make it look better. Here we go. All right, hopefully you guys can see that. My first year I had this up was in 2007, and the blue is 2018, the green is 2019. So the system didn't go live until February of 2017. So in January of last year and this year, we had almost the same amount of production, which was pretty piss poor, which was probably about 350, 380 kilowatt hours per that month because the days are shorter. February it got a little bit better. You can see that 2017 was reporting, but the funny thing was that last year, according to this, we had a better production than the first 2 years. But in March, we had a good production the first year, not so good the second. And this all has to do with atmospheric conditions, you know, whether it's sunny or it's not sunny. But you can see that by March, now we're getting up 800 kilowatts. I usually use between 650 and 850, something like that, kilowatt hours. Sometimes in the summer, if we're using a lot of AC, and that we might get it up to 900, 950. But this is about the band where I'm using everything. So what happens is, and remember, because I'm getting paid twice as much, I only need to make half as much and still have a zero bill. Anything else, I actually get a direct deposit in my account, which is very nice. But anyway, you'll see, keeps steadily getting better. June and July are usually the big months for me. Unfortunately, if you look at July over here, July for 2017 was a good month. It almost made it to 1 megawatt for the whole summer. July last year made over 1 megawatt in that month. And so these months were great. Now this is going to show you how badly things were going for me. Remember that the green is 2019. So this year we kept up with par. We did better than par. We did better than par. We did better this year. This year's looking really good. Not as good as last year for May, but better than the year before. And then halfway through June, the system stopped working. You can see it stopped working, so we didn't produce anything. Then in July, we produced nothing. And then halfway through August, it started producing again. So for the 24th of September, we've already made more power than we did last year. So that's good, but we still haven't made it as much. So I promised I'd give you the numbers. So here they are. Basically, I had to lay out about $34,000 in cash. The good news is that April, when you do your taxes, I got the over $10,000 back, and since I've had the system, it's, in the last 30 months, it's produced over 20 megawatts, which has given me over $7,800 worth of income, and I still have about almost $16,000 that I owe on the system. But remember, I've only had the system for 2.5 years. The system's been averaging about $3,128 of income a year, and that's really conservative too, because we just lost the two of the best months when the system died on me. But anyway, there's still 12.5 years left on the contract, and that's almost $40,000. That's $39,000 that's going to be left to pay me. So that's a good thing. So after the system is paid for itself, I should have about $23,000 of additional profit, not to mention no electric bill. So was it a good deal? Yes, I think it was. Thank you for watching, and I hope you consider subscribing. If you have any questions or comments, or if you're thinking of doing solar or have a solar story, please put it in the comments. Love to hear from you.